UK Indonesia Tech Hub at the British Embassy, Jakarta. I'll be your moderator today for the talk, and this webinar series is brought to you by AIS Forum. In this webinar series, we will deep dive together on how our lives on land can impact the lives underwater. Oceans cover 3/4 of the Earth's surface, containing 97% of the Earth's water and representing 99% of the living space on the planet by volume. Over 3 billion people, especially to those who live in archipelagic and island countries, depend on marine and coastal biodiversity for their livelihoods. However, almost 90% of global marine fish stocks are overfished by biodiversity or fully exploited. These dangers place further tension on ecological frameworks similar to biodiversity and regular foundation while making worldwide financial issues, including well-being, security, and monetary dangers. Together with us here today to discuss the main topic of today's talk, ensuring fish stock sustainability by leveraging innovative solutions, are our 4 amazing panelists who come from various backgrounds and expertise. Before we start our event, I would like to inform you that we have prepared an attendance list, a list that you might want to fill in and complete. So please see the chat box and you will find the link right there to fill in the form. This is for the attendance list to make sure that we will be able to generate the certificates accordingly to your name as well as attendance. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our panelists today. So the first one we have is Jensi Sartin, Project Manager of Global Marine Commodities of UNDP Indonesia. His projects focuses on building government-led cross-sectoral coordination, working with industry and market access and multi-stakeholder to improve sustainability in fisheries sector, specifically working on seafood supply and market access, sustainability and sustainable wild catcher fisheries, comprehensive fisheries development, integrating aquaculture, wild capture and conservation, and managing small-scale fisheries. Hi, Jensi, how are you?
Hi, okay. Very good here. Thank you so much. Long introduction.
It's a pleasure to have you here today as one of our panelists for today's topic. And of course, the next one, we have Alistair Smart, founding partner of Fishcoin at Each Mile Technologies, a blockchain-based traceability and data ecosystem designed specifically for the global seafood industry. He is recognized internationally for achievements in salmon harvesting and processing. Wide experience from 20+ years of working globally with many different aquaculture species and all aspects of the farming process. Hi, Alistair, how are you?
Good, thanks, Aki. Nice to be here.
Pleasure to have you here today as one of our panelists as well. And then our third panelist is also from the startup industry. We have Radix Anggarmana, project lead of IoT product of ZebraX, an industrial tech company established by Indica Energy, Indonesia's leading integrated energy company with a robust partnership network in digital connectivity, automation, and deep learning analytics. Radix has more than 15 years of experiences in developing technology-based solutions in various industries. Good afternoon, Radix.
Good afternoon, Oki. Thank you for having us.
Oh, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here today. And last but not least, a powerful woman figure amongst 3 of our men today in the panel. We have Michelle Irawan. She is the managing director of PT Etnico, family-owned business fishing enterprise with 20 years of experience in the fishing sector, and currently employs more than 250 people and has a zero-waste operation model. So Michelle here is also has a passion in ocean health and sustainable fisheries. Hi, Michelle. She will be joining us shortly as well, I believe. And what an exciting lineup of our talk show panelists today. And I want to kindly remind you again, audiences, that you are more than welcome to address any questions that you have by sharing them on the Q&A box on your Zoom and at the bottom of your screen. So don't forget to state your name, followed by your institution, organization, or company, and then the speaker's name, and then your question as well. Well, as we move on, I would like to go with, I would like to check if Michelle is here to join us, just to double check that everyone is present. One moment. And of course, as we are waiting for our 4th panelist, again, I would like to remind you to complete the attendance form. The link is also available to you on the Zoom chat. Make sure that as all participants joining this webinar, please fill it in so we can circulate the certificate of the webinar to you accordingly with your information. Let's move on to our webinar series. And so we all know that sustainable development goals, one particularly that comes to mind is when we talk about the fishery industry is the SDG14. So there are progress that have been achieved over the past years. However, the recent pandemic surely brings a major setback to all aspects of our lives, including our effort in achieving goals. However, many have said that the pandemic also offers an opportunity to revive the ocean and start building a sustainable ocean economy, possibly even contributing to the rebuilding of our fish stock. So Pak Jenzi, I'd like to invite you on our virtual stage. If you can give us a little bit of an explanation, kindly explain to us the main objective of SDG14 to many of our audiences who may already know or may not know, and what impact will it have on the current fishing practices?
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so allow me to share my screen just to guide you with my presentation. So I'm working with one of the project in UNDP. It's called Global Marine Commodities. It's a international project, a global project actually, and we are working in four countries in Philippines, Indonesia, Ecuador, and Costa Rica. So the approach of this project actually working on two aspects. So the first one, with you already explained a little bit in the introduction, which is building a national platform. So we call it a sustainable marine commodity platform, which basically focusing on bringing together all the multi-stakeholder in the fishery sector. Because, and I think Michelle also will talk about this, that fisheries is a complex sector. There are a lot of people on the sector, a lot of interest, and obviously very complex ecosystem as well. So we are working on bringing together all the stakeholder. The second approach that we are applying is we're working directly with the fisheries sector. So what we call is fisheries improvement project. So basically accelerating the work of the fisheries and the country to improve their fisheries to meet certain sustainability standard, which is will directly link to your question on the Sustainable Development Goal 14. So this is how we work, and I saw you a little bit on the model that we utilize. So like I said, there are lots of stakeholders in the fisheries sector, and the idea is how if we can bring together all the stakeholders, all the interests, and consolidate and coordinate, complement each other, and working directly with the industry, with the fishers who bring the fish to our plates, right? And then link them also to the consumer. So, and this project also already producing quite a lot of lesson learned and best practice, which is could be replicated, obviously, need to be contextualized, because fisheries again has a lot of characteristics. So there are a lot of lessons learned that we already produced, and anyone obviously can just go to our website globalmarinecommodities.org, and you can see there are a lot of best practice that we already developed, including some issues, some information regarding how you empower and also mainstream gender in the fisheries, which is traditionally man-dominated, they say. So now I want to go to my second point, which is directly linked to your question, SDG 14. So I think these graphs provide a much clearer framework, theoretical framework, how all the goals actually link together. And you can see down there is biosphere, which is related to goal 14, which is what we talk now, goal 15 on the life on land, goal 13, which is related to climate change, climate action, and goal 6, which is related to the water. So the diagram here, or the picture here, basically tell us that to the extent of society or economy able to grow actually limited by the capacity of the four goals below here. So, and I think the pandemic gives us a very real life example that the society and economy can only grow with the limit of the capacity of our nature. And it's totally the same situation with our fisheries or goal 14. So if we talk about goal 14 and today's topic, which is focusing on fish stock, I think us as people who have a privilege to access information and basically just Google it, etc. like that you can find better information and basically how to communicate our current situation when we're talking about the status of fish stock in the world. And you might also follow the for example the latest documentary about situation of our fisheries. But I mean, you have to just Google it and you will find that this is the latest report from FAO. And this is a biannual report. So the latest one is 2018. So this graph shows there are two colors here. The first one is the orange one, which is saying overfished stock. The bluish one is what we call maximally sustainably fished, and the below one is underfished. So what we aim in the fisheries management is the blue one, optimally use our stock. And the second aim is, turning the orange one into the bluish one. So that's the idea of fisheries management. And if we see the latest report in 2018, there are 65, about 66% of fisheries already still under sustainable, still bluish. And they supply nearly 80% of seafood in the world. So it's not green, not all green. There are progress there, and there are some one very good publication saying that intensive management in the fisheries works. If we manage our fisheries, it works. It decreases fishing pressure and also improve our stock. So this orange one, we can do something with it. We can rebuild it. So that's the message. And if you're talking about fisheries, we're not just talking about the fish itself, or fish as a food, or fish as a source of livelihood, fisheries. But it's a big thing because this is food security issue. If you see number here, 70%, source of protein, animal protein. But if we go specifically, for example, a small island country, or even in Indonesia, for the cases, if you go to some, eastern part of Indonesia, the protein source is 90%, 80 to 90% is coming from fish. So there is no other option, and that's why we have to be very contextual when we say to eat fish or not to eat fish. And of course, there are a lot of people, that get a life from, fisheries. 60 million directly employed, not include the one that indirectly, they are linking to the fisheries sector. And the last one, there are a lot of women actually working in the fisheries to bring the fresh, the sustainable fish into our plates. Now, related to our today's topic on the innovation, I think it all back to the basic of sustainability in the fisheries, which is two things. The first one, the extent of our understanding to the status of our stock, like how much actually fish that can be harvested, can be catch. And the second one is how good we able to develop a management intervention or management measure, and how good we enforce it. So if we bring innovation, it is about how the innovation can improve the stock assessment, our ability to understand the status of the stock, and the innovation also should work on how it can improve our ability to develop a best management measure and enforce it. And I want to show you, this is one of the paper by Gorospi et al. And basically the idea of innovation is actually, if you bring it to the management, is how innovation can work on all stages or stages of fisheries management or fisheries supply chain. So from pre-catch, before the fish is catch by our fisher, we have to know how is the status, what is the dynamic, what is the biological information, so those stuff. And then when the fish is catched by the fisher, we want to know what species, are there any other species, what kind of vessel actually caught the fish, whether the vessel is comply with the regulation. And after it's going from the vessel go to the processing plant, and we want to know how the storage is, what kind of SOP or procedure they use, and of course until the end, until the consumer of course want to know like whether the fish in their plate actually coming from sustainable source, sustainable fisheries. So that's what I see like. If the innovation is we want to using innovation to helping us in ensuring sustainability of the stock, I think that's one example of how we integrate innovation into the fisheries management. I think I will stop there and we can have a further discussion. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak Jensi, for that very insightful presentation. Shirley, you have already also shared how you are contributing in achieving the SDG14 goals. And I'd like to recap some of your really good points here, if I may. You did mention that 60 million in people directly working and depending on fisheries alone for their livelihood is a number that I think we all can sort of feel that is really impactful should anything happen. So best practices within that specific industry in fisheries is actually really, really essential. And I love that you also mentioned about how women are not getting as much exposure as they should, because they do play 50% of a role in the fisheries labor. So, and as you mentioned also, these informations of best practices and how to face several challenges within fisheries, inclusion and diversity can be also found in the globalmarinecommodities.org as well. So I would like to ask a few questions regarding your presentation. You've shared your contribution and steps of how to have a sustainable fisheries as well. But what gap do you actually see in the current fishery sector that outside of what you've mentioned in general, that has delayed us from achieving the goals specifically? Yeah,
thank you. Okay, so very good question. So obviously fisheries, just like any other sector, we call it extractive sector, when you taking out something from the nature, it is very complex sector. And you're not just talking about the fish itself, but also people working around the fish, and also management and policy regarding it. But what I really see as an important and the important message is intensive fisheries management can work. It can rebuild the fisheries that already overfished and also maintain fisheries that already sustainably managed. So focus on improving fisheries management, which is really rely on availability of data and also capacity of the fishers, capacity of the fisheries managers. And this is thing that of course vary between countries to countries. And obviously we're talking about developed countries, they have all the information, the technology, the funding, the resources, etc. While some other countries might have not that privilege. So I think the gap is how we can, share the lesson learned, share the resources to all other countries, so we can have the same capacity to, manage the fisheries. Because if you see my presentation before, the number about 30% of the fish that we catch from the nature actually, traded internationally. So we are not talking about Indonesia feeding Indonesia, Singapore feeding Singapore. We are thinking about feeding the whole world. So there must be cooperation between all the countries, all the states, all the stakeholders, who has what and who has not what, and complement each other. I think that's the challenge and also the gaps that we should work on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pajansi, for your answer. I do agree. I'm sure our panelists and our audiences also agree on the idea that there is that lack of integration and perhaps regulation or just the management of the fisheries industry as a whole. Again, lack to access of capacity building in that area. So to kind of follow up on your answer, how can we actually close that gap and actually ensure the sustainability in those fishery sectors? I understand that the model that you mentioned earlier are also kind of catered to this focus and getting all the key industry players together within fisheries and actually, getting their consolidating their needs, their challenges, and supporting through sharing knowledge. But what kind of steps exactly can one take to play a bigger part in that sense?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I think for a quick win, I would say for a quick win, let's and our model actually proved that starting to work on fisheries that highly exported, highly traded exported. So exported commodities. So for example, in tuna, in Indonesia, we're working with blue swimming crab. And grouper. So finding those kind of commodities where there are demand is high and the supply also usually sometimes because the demand is high, there will be a lot of pressure to the supply, right? So where we work is actually pull the buyer to work together, like basically asking like if you want a sustainable source, then the only option for you is to work with your producer.
Yeah.
Let's work together. What is your resources? And this is our resources. And bring the government together to see like, okay, what is the challenge here? What will the industry wants to sacrifice, for example, or to contribute? What are the academics want to contribute? So if there is a work where we can have open everything, open knowledge, open funding, that will be great. But of course, it's not, a long way. So I think that the easiest way for us to start is, finding commodities where you can work directly with your buyers. We can work directly with your producer, and there is, interest, high interest from the fisheries authority to work and improve that fisheries.
Thank you, Pajansi. Just like to recap that, it's definitely a really insightful step, and you have identified that gap and how to actually provide solutions by finding those commodities and working directly with the buyers and producers, which is never usually a simple thing to do, right? It's usually easier said than done. And finding mutual interest and actually mutually working and coordinating together is always the bigger challenge. So as part of our conversation today, it's like, how do we leverage technology, ensuring that fishery sustainability is present, right? So my next question, my last question for you today is, how do you see the role of technology providing us in achieving these goals?
I think it will play a big role, and again, the pandemic really teaches us a lot about the need for better use of technology. And we are not talking just about the digital stuff, that kind of thing, but basically any innovation and technology where we can improve efficiency, faster, better ability to do all the stuff that we are doing right now. And the example that I want to provide for is there is a lot of question mark on whether that certain fisheries actually doing illegal or not illegal stuff. They're doing good or bad, basically the thing. And we are relying, for example, on what we call observer on board. So we have person, independent, sitting on the board, basically seeing everything on the boat. But of course, for example, during this pandemic, it's not really able to maximize because we have this limitation to go to work. So the technology that we introduced lately mostly are related to electronic monitoring from on the boat. So basically, tracking things with combined with GPS and video, things like that. and it works. But of course, there are a lot of a challenge thing, because it's not just about you putting the camera there and then it's done. You're replacing the server. But after that, there are a lot of back end, and I think Radix will talk about this. There are a lot of back end work again on that aspect. So because the storage is really big, and sometimes it's not just about, okay, I have the data, but also even to like how I transfer this data to your computer, and it's really big data, video like hours and days and sometimes months. So how we can fasten everything, accelerate everything, and able to analyze it faster. So I think that's what we're looking for in the innovation.
Yes. No, I definitely agree. I myself, as part of the UK Indonesia Tech Hub, where we focus on, not only supporting the digital ecosystem as a whole in various sectors, technology does play a vital role. So I do second that by Jency, and it's not just the digital, because the innovation itself can be present, which is built and innovated by one group of people, but to improve efficiency, accelerate processes for the sustainable fisheries, for example. But it's also again, the back end, the capacity building. How can one not only just install it, but also maintain it? And how can you translate the data, transferring the data? Because getting the evidence of data is one thing, but I think to translate the data in terms of statistics and how it could support various points of those challenges can be most definitely challenging. Thank you so much, Jency, for your presentation, and of course, giving us your insights about technology, best practices on sustainable fisheries. And I'd like to now move on to our only lady of the panelists today. I see Michelle is here. Speaking of technology, there were a few challenges, but that is the best part of it. It is man-made, and it is, of course, going to be solved by us as well. Hi, Michelle. How are you? How are you doing? You're still on mute, so make sure you are unmuted.
Can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes, we can slightly hear you, which is great. So, Michelle, you are, you have run an enterprise that has 20 years of experience in this field. I want you to just enlighten us, our audience today, and just tell us a little bit of the major changes that are happening within the fishery industries in the last decade that maybe you have experienced. I'm just going to wait for a few minutes in case there is some technological issues.
Well, for sure, at the top, I'll pick up from what.
All right. Michelle, we can see your presentation. However, there is a slight distortion on your voice.
Can you hear me now? Is it okay?
Yes, yes.
Is it much better?
This is much better. Thank you.
No?
Yes, the virtual stage is yours. Perhaps we could turn off the video for you. And
hear me okay?
Yes, it's a little bit delayed. Would you like to try without the video?
Oh, no.
We love technology.
I'm using my phone. My camera is not working.
Okay.
Okay, sure. Okay, let me start. So,
yes.
Yeah, there has been a lot of change. Okay.
Hi, Michelle. I would just like to say that there is still a bit of a technological.
Can I rejoin in 30 seconds?
No worries. We can let you have your time. Of course, we understand technology can be a bit of a challenge.
Is it okay? Is it better now?
Would you like to just rejoin us again? That's okay. Maybe you could start.
Is that now?
Michelle?
Can you hear me okay right now?
Yes. Michelle, would you like to rejoin us again? All right. I think Michelle will join us shortly.
Okay. Let me can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? No?
Yes, but I think it's a little bit delayed. Okay, Michelle, we'll get back to you once you have rejoined us and resettled, if that's all right. All right, so I think when we were on the topic of technology with by Gen Z, I think I'd like to go on to our next speaker of the day. So we have Alistair. Sorry, I would just like to make sure. Hold on, Alistair.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Hi, Alistair. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, hopefully that sounds working. Yeah, I actually talking about technology. My computer just died on me a second ago as well. So
that's all right. I'm sure.
Guessing.
Yeah. We keep our fingers crossed, right? So, Alistair, Fishcoin has operated since 2017. How do you see digital technology actually filling up this gap in ensuring fishery sustainability? If you have a presentation, please do share it with us as well.
Yeah. There's a presentation which there we go. Here it comes. I'll give you a little bit of a quick background to this and where it came from. So we can go to the next slide. So really, this is the reason why we've kicked off this project, because we really we have to, because even though we've got some data that in some areas is suggesting things are moving in some places in the right directions, we do have a lot of challenges, and especially around the data. This is what we're talking about, the quality of the data, and that's kind of where we sort of put a lot of our focus. There's too much loss through supply chains, and even the climate change impacts that we're seeing as well. So this is kind of where we feel, because we've been involved in the seafood industry, and myself and my colleagues in the Fishcoin project, that we just felt that really we have almost a responsibility to do something about it when we've reached this, I guess, point in our careers, we could say, where we've got the ability to use all of this network and knowledge to try and make some positive impacts. So that's where it's born from. We can go have a look at the next slide then. So what we developed here was some ways. We talked about these 60 million fishers and farmers that are bringing our seafood are actually mainly small-scale producers in developing nations. So the challenge is, how do we get to this first mile, as it's often referred to as? How do we reach these people? Because without reaching them, then we don't really have. So traceability is kind of the first point. How do we get to the source so that we are able to actually have real data and be able to actually incentivize them to share the data of their catch, so we can then better manage the fisheries, like Jancy was talking about. How do we, to be able to better manage these fisheries, we've got to have these fishers and on board, as well as the farmers, these millions of people in these developing nations. And it's 1 in 10 livelihoods on the planet. This is absolutely mission critical for the planet, is to have a responsible food production in the supply chains. So that's where this project came about. If we can have a look at the next slide. And the key issue is that the incentive structures we sort of see are quite broken, where these fishers and farmers can be paid as little as 5% of the retail price, and it's not really, they're not getting paid for the quality of the product that they're producing, whether they're sustainable or responsible or not. And we've got a lot of the middle actors in the supply chains that are the gatekeepers that control all the information, and this feeds into these cycles. So you end up with all these costs that come. You have social costs, where you've got people who were fishermen. Now, when there's no fish, they've got guns, so then we have piracy issues, and so we have all these other stuff. That's one quite radical issue, but that's a real issue that we do see. We have economic challenges, and we have environmental challenges. This is one showing beyond seafood, because we've sort of got this problem in other industries as well, and we're just sticking to seafood at the moment. This is looking at things like palm oil, and that's another got similar challenges. We can have a look at the next slide. So the root cause that we see is why we are failing is what is often referred to as the tragedy of the commons, where we've got this, it's a failure of a shared resource system. Everybody has equal and open access, and so that leads to eventual collapse. And so we see that the trust, data, and ownership is the key to this. If we have these resources owned, or there's rights then given to these fishers and farmers, then they're incentivized to protect it from overexploitation. So we need to show the data where there's history of them being involved in this, so we can then, to manage this resource sustainably, we can identify and verify and reward those involved in that legal and responsible production. So this is what it's all about: data. To be able to monitor and have compliance, we need data, and to get that data, we need trust. This is sort of leading us on this journey of how do we actually get this data to be able to get more sort of rights-based fisheries management that then puts back the incentive for these fishers to actually better manage the resource. And I actually thought, probably going about 15 years ago, when I was quite heavily focused in fish farming, that fishing would go the way of hunting, I guess, on land, where we don't really sort of go out and get a lot of wild chickens these days. And it's, that's kind of what's happened. We've kind of overexploited the land, and we've got domestic farming systems. And I thought the same would happen with the sea. But I believe I've seen such good examples that we can have really good sustainable fisheries. As Janzi was just talking about, it is very possible to have sustainably managed fisheries, which is a very exciting thing for this incredibly healthy protein source. So we can go to the next one. So perhaps it's time for some disruption. And we've seen technology massively, very rapidly disrupt the way we buy things, all the ag goods and services, like the way we order a taxi, with things like Uber, accommodation, things like Airbnb. So could we have platforms also disrupt our seafood and ag supply chains to reduce these problems of socioeconomic environmental costs and improve our overall sustainability responsibility? Possibly, but platforms also still have their challenges. I mean, we've seen that with IUU fishing challenges, and we've seen that with some big platforms like Alibaba, who, I think they have massive challenges. If we go to the next slide, I might even have a slide showing some of that. I'm not sure. This one here is really talking about how much we actually do have a track of. We basically only have around 6% of companies that sell us products with full traceability through to the source. So this is a major brand risk for these big companies. So it means we can't really identify, verify, and reward that responsible production. So this is we like to say, it's like having the steering wheel disconnected from the wheels and we're driving our planet off towards a cliff. If we can't have that base level traceability, then how do we steer our planet towards operating within planetary boundaries? So we can go to the next one. So this application that we've developed is sort of seafood focused, called Mfish. And as I said earlier when we were having a discussion around this, this is just an example of one application. We can, as I say, the son of a fisherman or the daughter of a fish farmer could also produce the same applications that could plug into our underlying sort of trace protocol. So it's a big industry, $900 billion. And as we said, 90% of it is small scale. 31% of them are unbanked. 67% of these producers have got prepaid phones. So they want more remuneration for their fish, and they should receive more remuneration for their fish. And the buyers need their data. The buyers need to be able to show, where does your fish come from? How do we get to that first mile? So if we have a look at the next slide, this is the application that we're doing with the AIS Forum in NADA, where we're going to demonstrate this in a number of different ways. The way the application works on a fishing basis is when the first buyer is buying the fish, he pays for it the same way as always, with cash, and they have the negotiation on how much those fish are worth. But he also pays for the data, and they negotiate, how much is this data for this fish that I've caught worth to you, because you're going to try and sell that and get into some of these developed nation markets perhaps, and that data has value because you can't get it to those markets without that. So what the first buyer does, I will accept that record because it matches the catch, and I'll pay you $2 for the data. And the fisher goes, I want $2.50. And he goes, okay, how about $2.25 deal? So that's the negotiation, and then that gets sent to their mobile phone, and then they can top up their mobile phone. So they get airtime top-ups automatically in 150 countries with 550 telcos. So that's what we've developed. And that incentive can be used in lots of different ways. Here's another way. We went to Lombok. This picture is of a little coral trout that was in the market, would receive 9 cents. So what we're looking to do in this project with James Cook University and Sam Radalanga University is use this incentive in another way to keep that fish in the water. So that first fisherman catches that fish and tags that fish. And for doing that and recording that on the application, they receive some fish coins. So they receive airtime top-ups, more than the value of the fish. So if they say they were going to get 9 cents, they get 20 cents. So they get rewarded. And then the second fisher catches it when it's grown up for several months, a bit bigger, still not that big. Let's say they might have received 50 cents for that fish. Okay, so they receive fish coins for tagging that fish or recording the tag number on that fish. And then also the first fisher gets some tokens for that. So it goes back down the chain because it's all on the blockchain. Then the third fisher catches it a year later, it's worth $8, and he records that. He gets his tokens for the data for selling that fish. And also those first two fishers get rewarded because they were the original fishers that put that fish back in the water. So this is an example in practice of like mark, release and recapture of undersized fish. So how a fishing communities are here empowered, incentivized to look after their stocks and manage them. And we've seen this in developed nations, exact kind of thing working. And it's just about how do we get this? I mean, this is where they have access to a lot more regulations and technology. But that mobile phone is extremely powerful computer. If we think about years ago, that thing would have filled several rooms of these buzzing old computers, and now it's in this very affordable form, and people have got such wide use of them. So if we have a look at the next slide, I think this takes it to another level where we're talking now larger vessels, but I think the European Union has just mandated that vessels over 10 metres need to have camera systems now. So we're seeing these systems become more and more affordable, and we're working with a group of people here in the logos that are basically, this goes further than just monitoring fishing practices. It also monitors the environment. So we start to use this massive resource of fishers that are spread around the world to collect environmental information as well. This can be very valuable for looking at things like transshipment at sea and managing all these things, because you wire the whole vessel up. And this is where Radix has got a lot of knowledge. So it's using all of these IoT sensors that plug in to the central hub, and then the data goes up to the satellite. And this is where the European Space Agency comes in, and stored on the data on the cloud platform, as well as there's a digital fingerprint of all of that information that we store on the blockchain, and that's where we come in. So this is a very small, quick brush over of what we're doing, but we're very excited about, I think, how we can use technology to make some rapid change, because we know it can get taken up very quickly, as we've seen in a lot of developing nations, how fast this type of thing can be taken up. And so we're really focused on how do we get to that first mile and incentivize them, because they can't afford to pay for a traceability system. And what incentive is there to have one? It's the downstream actors that need to pay for that, because they're the ones that need it. And so using this, using the blockchain and using this incentive technique, we can actually pay for the traceability system and reward them for sharing their data. So that's, yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Alistair. I learned some very new things in technology, especially fisheries. It's funny because my father actually works within the area of maritime, so I've always grown up around this, and I'm just fascinated. I'm sure our audiences as well are fascinated to see the development in technology and how much it really can support the idea of having a sustainable fishery. So you did mention, a number of technological content there that are actually far beyond what maybe some of us have been exposed to. So I really like the idea that Fishcoin actually developed this seafood focus app, Mfish, you mentioned earlier, which actually provides and incentivize programs. I do agree that the downstream should be responsible or held accountable for actually paying or funding for data management. And so with all that, you've come so far, and I'm sure you face a lot of challenges. And I just would like to hear from your side, what has been the challenges for you in actually adapting all these technology, especially in a developing country, because you did mention development, developed nations have that supporting regulation, have that kind of access to technology and just training in terms of capacity building to be able to use that technology. But what has been your challenges so far, Fishcoin?
Well, definitely COVID has been the big one for sure, because that just I think everybody, it's not just developing nations, but I think developing nations not being able to travel and having that face-to-face contact, which is so important. We were, I think, last February, not this one just gone, we were in Madagascar and Mauritius, and we were, and before that we were in Aceh, and we were working with the governments, with the fishers, and all those people that's required to, because there's, just without having that face-to-face, it's really hard to get these things in. So we've now had to spend a lot of time with these type of, luckily we've got video that helps, but we feel very lucky where we have been to these different countries and met with all of these different groups where they can help, because no one can do it by themselves. That's why we have the AIS Forum. It's all about collaboration and networks. And so the other one has been, I guess, around the technology. The blockchain technology, when we started in 2017, was quite immature, and there's a lot of regulatory challenges around that as well, but it's really improving and becoming much more mainstream. So that's helping as well. So they're probably the two biggest challenges.
Yeah, I'm sure many of those in the tech sector can agree. As when you mentioned about blockchain technology, I mean, there was a lot of discussions with pro and cons against blockchain, and especially, I never knew blockchain could be embedded or integrated within the sector itself. So, but no, I definitely agree that there are those regulatory challenges, but it has been kind of lenient in the recent years. My question, before we push off to the last question, actually, I'm really interested to know how you interacted with the local governments and communities, especially bringing in technology. Everyone always feels like when you come and approach a specific group of people, they feel like you have an agenda. Everyone has an agenda, but the overall agenda here I can see is for the better and for the good, right? So how was it to bring in this technology, especially about utilizing, maximizing data to provide like this incentivized system to the likes of Aceh and Lombok and all these areas? How was that for you in terms of approaching them?
I mean, I guess there are the challenges that you have, because we have multiple stakeholders. You've got the fishers and the fishermen, and as we've mentioned, that women are actually very important in that picture, even because we find that mainly the record keepers, so the people who are actually doing the data entry, are often also the women. The men might be doing fishing, but women are often doing a lot of the recording, which is an equally important role, because that's the data capture part of it. So and also what we like about this as well is that the empowerment can come from once they're doing the data collection, so they're receiving the airtime top-ups, and this is giving them then the access to the internet, which is the key, because that mobile phone is their window to the world, and that provides them with the ability to educate their children, to also look at women's health issues and become just more educated in general. So that's good. But more onto your question, the challenges with with government is that the fishermen aren't great trusters of the government in general. And that's where that's this third-party trust, where the blockchain is quite useful for, but we have to work with governments ourselves. And so what we want to try and do is to build up a pool of data. And we start off with in our manifesto is the data is something that can be used for management, but there is no identification as such that puts them at risk. But then over a period of time, then we disaggregate that, because we want ultimately, we want to pay tax on these transactions so that this provides more income for monitoring and compliance and management and all these things. So it's totally important to engage. And some of the local governments, for example, in Indonesia, have been really good for and helpful, and also in Mauritius and Madagascar. And once we start telling the story, they really want to get involved, and they help with the sandboxes to be able to explore things, you know, in these type of environments. So that, you know, using even government-owned banks and things like that to be able to help the unbanked become banked, because identification is a really big part of this as well. Obviously, it comes in because there's the social side. We start to look at things like where there is bonded labour and slavery and child labour in these supply chains. We can, you know, help identify that and manage that better, because you know, we can also reward the deckhands on these boats as well, for example.
Yeah, I think that overall, it's like holding accountability is important, basically. And no, I'm sure everyone here also agrees. And before we move on, I do want to ask you, last but not least, about your biggest milestone Fish coined, and that you have reached so far. What has it been the biggest milestone in kind of achieving this SDG goals? Just briefly. And of course, the last question that I want to ask you, what is the next thing for Fishcoin that you hope to achieve?
Well, I don't think I can publicly almost announce the next thing, but some pretty exciting stuff. We are.
Give us a hint.
One thing, I think a little hint. Yeah, well, I think one thing that's happening because of COVID is that we've been doing much more work on the tech side of things. So that's becoming just to make the onboarding easier and smoother and more sophistications and also more elements to it. I mean, our big aim here is to make this, this is what we're working towards, so I'll give a little hint, is to make this so that the first mile fishers and fish farmers actually become owners, or they have tokenized equity in the business of the traceability. So they become actual shareholders in the business of their own traceability, as well as for ultimately trading their fish on a trading platform. So
that's a big step.
We can't think of a more inclusive business model than that. So I mean, and so that milestone is yet to be achieved, but until now, it's all about collaboration. So it's the big milestones have been key collaborations with companies like Thai Union, and even it's a big one with the UNDP AIS with this work we just mentioned, Monado. The US State Department for their fish hackathon support, so they've been really good. So we manage the fish hackathon, which is the world's largest environmental hackathon, and they've been very supportive of that. Obviously, because these countries are mass importers of seafood that are coming out of these developing nations from all these small scale producers. They have a very big vested interest, because I mean, Australia imports 75% of its seafood as well. So we're part of the problem in some respects, because we are demanding this, and that's creating more incentive for lots more fishers. So, you know, then we've got to manage that.
No, for sure. That's definitely great to hear. And I really hope that Fishcoin will achieve your next biggest milestone. We look forward to seeing that as well. Thank you so much, Alistair, for sharing your presentation and answering some of my questions. Speaking of questions, to our audiences, don't forget to make sure that you fill in the form for the attendance list so that you will have a certification with your name on it as well after this webinar. But also, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, even if they're not spoken yet, please do put it in the Q&A box below on your Zoom screen. Now, speaking of technology, which is kind of the overall subject of today's webinar, we do have a local company from Indonesia that are developing breakthrough technologies to help industries embrace Industry 4.0. Radix, who is working at ZebraX. How is ZebraX viewing the challenges that the fishery industry is experiencing? I understand you have a presentation, Radix. Please do share with us.
Okay, thank you, Oki. Okay, let me share my presentations. Okay, is it already available for everyone to see?
Yes, the virtual stage is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first of all, very good afternoon for everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. Thank you for UNDP as well as AIS Forum to give Cerebral opportunity to share our solution to support the sustainability in fishery sector by leveraging IoT technology. My name is Adi Ingarmana. I'm currently a product lead on the IT solution in the Cerebral. Okay. Okay, a bit background about our company. So basically, the Cerebral is specialized in the Industry 4.0 solution framework. We want to bridging the gap between data and business impact. How to do so is we will do the acquire and aggregate data using IT technology and analyze and activate it with our solution on the data management and advanced analytics service layer. Thus, with this framework, we can deliver the insight to business insight, and from business insight it become the business initiative, and from business initiative it become the business impact. So that's we want to do. Okay, as we may know, Indonesia is actually the largest archipelagic country in the world with around 54,000 kilometer coastline, makes it second largest in the world after Canada. Our fishers and fishing industry contribute to 2.65% of the Indonesian gross domestic product, with the 1.5 millions of the working population making a living from this sector. With most of Indonesian fishers are actually a small scale, using a small fishing boat with the boat size actually lesser than 10 gross ton. We need a solution to collect data to gain the insight to support the sustainability program and initiative. So this is our solution for collecting the data for a small fishing boat. So our most small fishing boat don't have the electric power. Thus we design our solution with the battery and solar panel to extend the battery life. Thus it can collect the data for a longer period within single charge. We use the GSM instead of the satellite because we don't consume a lot of power for satellite connectivity, also lowering the cost of operation. Our satellite communication costs around 50 to 100 US dollar per month. With the GSM, the cost will only $2 US per month. So it will be a fraction of it. When there is no GSM coverage, when the fishers actually fall on the sea, we will still collect the data and send it over the later once the GSM connectivity is available. It supports also for the flexible device configuration over the air, because it can change the data collection frequency remotely. If we need a more granular data, then we can change this configuration. So if you want to change the data collection, let's say from the 10 minutes interval to 5 minutes interval, it can be done remotely without having us to change it on the device directly. Okay, basically this is the flow of the data captured from the small fishing boat until the data can be visualized in our IoT platform. We collect the data of the GPS location, vibration, and other sensor data offered to our IoT platform using the GSM network. And from that one, we will be able to visualize it. So this is the benefit that we can think through for what are the implementing of the IoT solutions. So we can bring the benefit into the government for the business, for the government, for the NGO, as well as the customer itself. From the business related with the fishing zone analysis, we can monitor the current fishing zone and how this zone change over the time due to the change of the sea and ocean ecosystem. So we will be able to monitor the ecosystem as well. From the productivity analysis, we can combining the tracking telemetry data with the fish catch quantity as well as to provide insight for the productivity. If there is a drop of the productivity, it can indicate overfishing on the previous period or indication that there is a damage on the ecosystem. On the safety aspect, we can overlay the weather forecast information with the fishing zone location. Thus, if there is a need if there is a bad weather coming, the fishers can know and not fishing on that day and can allocate the day for the maintenance, let's say for the fixing of their boat. So the day is actually still productive, even though they are not actually fishing to the sea. It also can benefit for the rescue operations. So by knowing the past fishing zone, the rescue operation, when there is a suspected accident, let's say the fisherman not returning home on time, we can locate easily when there is a search and rescue operation to be conducted. So that's the benefit for the business. From the government, we can create a better policy. So when we will be able to create a much more better policy, if we can rely on the data that combines the tracking telemetry data as well as the productivity data from the fish catch quantity to protect the sea and ocean ecosystem from for sustainability. We also can monitor the fishing zone compliance. So basically, we will be able to tracking the fishing zone compliance will be easier if we can get the data tracking telemetry directly from the fishing boat and without having to collect it manually. And the next one is actually related with the monitoring of fishing zone tools compliance. We can monitor the fishing tools based on the fishing boat movement pattern. Thus, we can monitor as well as enforce the process is easier. From the non-government organization, we can create and monitor the program based on the IoT data. So we can see whether our program is actually works and whether it's actually gain the insight. Yeah. For the consumer, just like the one that is stated by Alistair, combining the IoT with the blockchain technology can provide the transparency of the supply chain process from the moment the fish actually harvested on the sea until it can reach to the customer hand. It also can support the sustainability program. With the transparency of the supply chain, we can provide the info that the fish harvested from the trusted source with the proper equipment and also not causing the ecosystem damage. Consumer more likely willing to pay more for the fish produce, which since they are actually supporting the sustainability program. The higher price of the fish produce in turn can benefit the fishermen or industry in general. Thank you. So that's actually my presentation for the today. If you'd like to know more or discuss a particular use case with us, you may contact us at inquiry@zebracross or visit our website at www.zebracross.id. I return the time to Mbak Oki. Thank you.
Thank you, Radix, for that presentation. I'm just loving the innovations that we are seeing today from the speakers. And ZebraX, as you mentioned earlier, is about collecting that data. And I love that you actually provided that product sample on there about putting it on a fishing boat, those that don't actually use a lot of electrical power, and then actually resorting to using battery and having it run through battery or solar panel. And you know, when you are developing this very technology, I want to jump into a question here. I'm sure a lot of our audiences are not only those playing in the technology sector, but also perhaps aspiring tech innovators who might want to go in to actually create and innovate technology to provide solutions for sustainable fishery. So when you did, when the team developed this very technology, I understand you took into account about data collection, right? But how were you, what were the steps that you took to consider about the users themselves? Because technology is always present, but it's the capacity that some of us lack in terms of using the technology. So what were the steps that ZebraX actually took when developing this very product to ensure that the technology was easily adaptable for the users who are maybe those fishermen that do not have direct access to these trainings or knowledge to technology?
Okay, good question, Mbak Oki. So initially, actually, we are actually focusing on the data analytics, yeah. But we see that our clients actually, most of them actually don't have the data, or actually they have the data but collect it manually. That's why we need the IoT device to collect it to replace the human. So we will have much more consistent data, because with the much more consistent data, it will have provide a much more better data for us to gain the insight or some initiative for related to that one. Now, related with the device itself, we are keep iterating on our solution to make it easier on the installation itself. So we have several steps. So basically, how the solution has been deployed. So how it's actually installed to the boat, and then second one is actually how it's actually the device is can be operated. So on our solution, we are actually minimizing the button. So basically, when we deploy solution, the device is actually always on. It always collecting the data. Because some of our drawback previously is last time we introduced a button, let's say, to make it on and off, but sometimes actually the fishers forget to turn it on when they are going to the sea, and this is become the usability of the problem. So we are actually removing the human intervention whatsoever. So when we deploy the things, it's always on and collect, no human intervention, and it's collected. And we also provide some signal indicator whether the device actually need to be recharged. So let's say we have the force signal indicator is actually from 25%, 25 to 50, 50 to 70, 70 to 100. So if this one is actually going down and it's actually reaching to the one signal only, but that is actually the battery already lesser than 25%, it can be indicated initially, and the basically the fisherman actually can plug into the power to recharge the device. And we also put the solar panel to extend the battery life. We know that actually it's hard to make it sustainable, that the amount of the energy to capture the data and to transmit it to our cloud, it takes too much power to consume instead of the energy that we can collect from the solar. So the solar is just to extend the battery life, but our idea is actually with the implementation of the solar, it can extend the battery life. So basically the consumer or the fisher in this sense actually don't have to recharge. So they just need to recharge on every week basically. So it doesn't disrupt their fishing process. They just need to recharge it every week. And we also make it easy to be plug and play from the boat. So it's easy to detach from the boat, and we also can charge it at home. Once it's actually fully recharged, we can just plug it back to the boat to collect the data.
Yeah, no, that's really a lot of consideration, which I think the users themselves really appreciate as you keep trying to innovate and making it more simpler for the users, which I think should be a priority, especially for tech companies in the future. Maybe all of you who are watching here today who are keen to develop your own technology to provide solutions for sustainable fishery. So the last question, because we do have a lot of questions today from our audiences, so keep them coming. Make sure you guys put in the Q&A box as well. And Radix, there is always a challenge, and we love discussing a challenge as opposed to just accolades. So what were the challenges for Zebra Access so far? And what opportunities do you think will arise in the future with all these challenges and learning lessons that you've come across?
Okay, maybe I see from the IoT side first. So basically, if we see the challenge of the IoT side is basically we always come into two challenges, primary challenges. Basically, it's actually the power source. So where is the power source to basically power up the device to collect the data, or actually collecting the data, or actually sending some action to make it some automations. Or second one is actually with the connectivity. How the data will be transferred over the internet. So let's say like the one that is actually vessels at the sea. We need to compromise whether we want to use the satellite communication or we want to use the GSM connectivity. The trade-off as well is related with the battery consumption. If we use the satellite, it actually will cost a lot of power, and also the cost for the satellite connectivity is also higher. So that's the primary changes for us to decide what are the power management, whether we can plug it into the power source, maybe on the boat or maybe on other industries directly to the equipment. If we actually don't have it, then we need to have a battery, and we also need to have additional solar power panel to extend the battery life, as well as the connectivity aspect, whether we want to, whether it's actually feasible to use the GSM network, whether there is a coverage. And actually, if there is no GSM network, what we can do? Can we lock it? The data, so that means we don't lose the data, but once the connectivity is available, we can able to transfer it in our cloud. So that kind of consideration is need to be have that one. Related with opportunities, actually the one that I can see is actually far beyond the IoT itself, is actually related with the data enrichment, because the IoT is actually for the data collection and aggregation with other data source. So this is just data, just initial data. I mean, not much value can it. But once we can combine the data from the finance, commercial model, and then the fish stock itself, productivity, climate change, then it become rich data. So basically, we need to have open platform for us to share the data. Because once we share the data, so many insights that we can basically collaborate to make a much more better program, better initiative for the sustainability of the fishery sector itself. So basically, that's the opportunity, the one that we have, if we can basically now share the data that we collected. I mean, first collect the data in such efficient manner, proper manner that is actually consistent. It's easy to be processed by the machine. And then second one is to share the data to benefit for all mankind, especially on the fisheries sector. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone here really emphasized on a lot about data collecting, data management, data analysis, but also bearing in mind when you come with technology of like data collection, I always like to say, always have that mitigation plan to make sure that our cyber security proof, especially when you're talking about data, and most technology companies are investing a lot in that as well. Radix, thank you so much for sharing about ZebraX. And if you have any more questions or you want any more information, please do chat with us in the box below. And now I would like to come back to our lady and the panelists. We've got Michelle. Michelle, are you back on here with us?
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, Michelle, thank you. I'm so excited to be able to hear you.
Yes. Sorry, I'm going to turn off my video so that the connectivity. All right. Okay. Anyway, I'm so excited to be here. You all are my people. You know, finally we're talking about fish and only fish. Yeah. So my name is Michelle, and actually you can call me Tuna Girl. It's been 11 years now I joined my family business because we focus on tuna catching and processing, and we also do export and trading. And as you know, Indonesia is the largest archipelago country, but pause a moment. 63% are actually covered by the ocean, and most of it are not being untapped. And it's always the same, right? Logistics, fuel costs, and weather, and all is a very heavy assets to have if you want to move these goods around, and also to build infrastructure. And actually we have 10 catching grounds in Indonesia. It's been divided, and our operation focus on WPP 715 and 716 is in the North Maluku on the eastern side of Sulawesi. Next, Marcella. Hello. Okay, yeah. And this is actually, when I got this image, I was so shocked because, this is literally the tuna trade in the world. Although, we are located in the coral part of the Coral Triangle, is where the richest biodiversity and the corals can be found. Coral Triangle actually consists of 6 countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Solomon Island, and Timor-Leste. And what's the coincidence? The regional office is in North Sulawesi, and I'm in North Sulawesi. And, it's no coincidence as well, where the rich biodiversity, there's also where you can find, very abundance of live fish stocks and marine species, basically. And healthy ecosystem actually is what gives the quality of the ocean produce and the livelihood of the fishes. And Indonesia is actually the second largest fisheries producers, but the largest tuna producer. If you don't know the facts, like roughly 1 of the 6 tuna catch in Indonesia, in the world, are actually from Indonesia. So it can be like example, like for us, we can send, fresh tuna to the Tsukiji in Japan, and then later it can be auctioned off and then sent back to Jakarta, or even send, back to the rest of the world. But it's from Indonesia, and that was one of the shocking things that I found when I actually explored, go deeper in the fisheries. Next. So North Sulawesi has a legacy of entrepreneurship, and it has set the global standards of fishing and export since the 90s. And it's actually called the Tuna City, Kota Cakalang, because the tuna landing and produce are exported to 35 countries, and the facilities that's already available here can absorb up to 1,500 tons each day. Next. And North Sulawesi, actually, to put you in perspective, we have about 14 canning big factories in Indonesia, and 7 are actually established here. Actually, here is a picture of our facilities, and to answer one of the questions earlier, we have over 30 vessels, and most of it are grounded because of the impact of the moratorium of Ibu Susi. And we're kind of like stuck in between because we're not really small, but we're not that big as well, like Thai Union. And we're in the middle. We're over 30 GT, but below 100 GT, our vessels. So we're kind of like caught in the middle, and it has been a tough 6 years trying to navigate and survive and get our vessels operation again. Next. And why, if you don't know the different types of tunas, these are actually the top players. And in Bitung, 81% of the catch are actually tuna species. Skipjack tuna is actually cakalang, yellowfin, or usually the big, it can grow up to 200 kilo actually, but averagely we catch about 30, 50 kilo. And it's the one that's used for sashimi and most of the steak of fish. And then frigate tuna is ikan deho. And he has the batik pattern on it, which is, I think, fascinating. Next. So actually, my family business is founded by my mom single-handedly, and the name Ethnico is from Eti, my mom's name, Michelle, myself, and Erwin, my brother, company. It's just the three of us. We have two companies. One is Ethnico Makmur Abadi. It's 100% local and focused on fishing. And we have the cold storage, ice, and fish meal manufacturing plants. And we also do trading and exports. And the second is the Ethnico Sarana Laut. It's a joint venture with Yamaki. It's another family business in Japan, from Japan. They're actually 104 years old this year, and we focus on katsuobushi manufacturing. So if you don't know, katsuobushi is actually a fermented smoked fish that has been polished by traditional Japanese skills, and is a key ingredient for in Japanese food culture. And dashi soup stock is actually made from katsuobushi shavings. And if you don't know that, if you love miso soup or ramen, then there you have actually tasted dashi or katsuobushi. And with the growing popularity of Japanese cuisine, it's actually really important to preserve the way of making katsuobushi. And one of the key ingredients is actually high quality of skipjack with low fat. And that's why, in Bitung, we have 5 katsuobushi manufacturing factory because of the quality of the skipjack and cakalang that can be found in our waters here. Next. Yes, okay. So it has been a long way since Ethnico has been founded in the year 2000 by my mom. And over 21 years, we have exported to about 10 countries, and regularly we export to Japan. We are actually traditional fishing operations with family-oriented values. So we make everything in-house, from construction of the factory building, repairing of the vessels, building of the vessels, maintenance of the machineries, engineering. And as because, we have 21 years old, my staff are also that old. So they're a bit outdated. And so, when come with technology, it's a bit of challenge because, it's about, I don't want to replace them. So we have to convert. And, our journey and our zero waste circular support system is actually through the necessity. And we realize that preserving the quality of the fish is needed and adding value to the precious product. So we invested in building like the ice block plants, brine tank, cold storage, and then later on, when we actually add value with katsuobushi manufacturing, and then have our first fishing to secure a stable supply of raw materials of fish. And it wasn't until 2013, as we grow our operation, we found we have a lot of reject fish, so we built the fish meat. But again, this is still low value. And I know in Iceland, they actually can get, amino acid, collagen, and, all this beautiful, high value added. But again, it's another added investment with high tech. And, unless it's like a cross, like knowledge transfer, technologies transfer, and investment, I think we're still a long way, and it's a pity because we have to fish here, right? And as we are only as good as the people in our team. As we patch a storm, we grow through experience, and as the cost of production are increasing and tuna market price are also challenging with extreme weather, we actually have to rethink our whole operations basically. Next. So the company has grown to be an integrated business right now, and we are adopting a sustainable approach and zero waste approach, but we still have a lot of work. We changed our strategy after the moratorium when most of our vessels are grounded by working with the island communities and fishermen cooperatives to collect and purchase all their fish. And we hope in the near future we can continue to innovate and collaborate and actually create new products, new innovations that can actually be shared with our supply chain. Next. So I had awakening in 2017. It was not. We lost our vessels, due to storms, and because we just renovated the vessels to comply with the regulations. And I guess it's a huge wake-up call for me and my brother, because we were really shocked. Both of us didn't really study like mechanical engineering or marine in engineering, so we're not really sure what the team has missed when they actually renovate the vessels to comply, and then what actually can we do better. So I start my journey as the tuna girl by asking what is sustainable fishery, where are we not doing right, how can we be better, what are the opportunities, solutions out there that we can incorporate in our operations. Next. And after exploring for 4 years, we realized, to commit and move forward, because, for us, this is like marriage, right? We are not going to like divorce the company and leave my community and my employment. So we have to think, and how can we actually, what is it that we're going to commit on? And we realized that, it has to be in the core. We have to define our core values, and the future must be inclusive, and how can we input all our stuff, right, that doesn't necessarily graduate from with all the technicality or availability of technology tech savvy, but then how can we train them and even share know-how by collaborating with partners. Hopefully I can collaborate with all of you. And this is like something like my secret wish. And hopefully also, in a complex industry like fishing, it's not very easy. It's easier to build something from brand new, basically. It's not easy to plug in technology with an existing, traditional or 20 years of operations, because we might disrupt our current productions or our current flow, and that will risk the business and the quality of fish maybe, and maybe the safety of the vessel, something like that. So and also of course there will be the cost, and hopefully like in Indonesia language, and yeah, I just feel that in the future we need to give inspiration, so that the next generation of the fishermen's kids, they will want to go and hire and learn marine biology or marine technology and engineering, so that they actually can create their own innovation to actually support their own parents, right? It has been in the fishing business or fisheries industry for so long. Next. And we all know like small fishery in Asia are lacking and so far behind in innovation, technology, and R&D. Like, I visited Norway and Iceland, and I was just so shocked, because like the R&D are actually being funded by the government, and it's like millions of dollars, right? In a country like us, we are not going to be able to fork out that money just to do R&D, and so we have to kind of like mix and match and see low-hanging fruits, low tech that we can adopt, and hopefully when we actually generate new collaboration between the industry, we can co-invest and then create more new high value product made in Indonesia. And we can adopt the model of salmon or cod and actually maybe replicate it to tuna, right? And tuna can no longer just a commodity of like sashimi or like canned tuna of your sandwich, but tuna maybe can be a force of good. We don't know what actually goes beyond like the skin of tuna. And so I'm actually excited for that possibility. And this is somehow kind of like our future plan. So what I call the tuna value journey, because we need to think with our entrepreneurship hat to turn commodity tuna into high value stored fish. And then how can we leverage technology to drive efficiency and push the cost of our operation down? And then how can we focus on innovation, that actually maybe create safety, right? And higher value of the fish caught. And traceability, of course, I'm really excited. That has been like Fishcoin and Google asks. I think, we have a chance maybe to collaborate and try if my fishing vessels can adopt, of course. And then I think the most important is how can we actually improve the quality of life of the fishermen and the fishing industry as a whole? Because, this is what I found out, like day trip fishermen, they have to leave at 7 p.m. and come back at 5 a.m. It's a tough work, and work and fishing at night, it's not safe, right? If you have sudden hit of a thunderstorm, and maybe like us, like our vessels are in the sea for like 2 weeks up to a month, so it's like it's not an easy work. And I can understand, of course, if they don't want kids to work like this. So we have to rethink the whole fishing experience and work quality, I think, as a whole, and find how can we actually improve use technology to improve the lives of the fishermen and the value of the fishing industry as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for that insightful presentation. I'm so glad that you were able to share, the development and the history of your family business. There are always challenges with having family businesses, and I love that you are so vulnerable in sharing the fact that the absence of technical engineering knowledge and capabilities of you and your brother actually still contributed to the innovation for your business, kind of changing, creating those changes for efficiencies and transferring the culture of the business from traditional to actually transgressing to more to what is actually better now, what is actually needed as well during this time. I do have a few questions, so I think we are going to move on to the questions and answer session, Q&A. So thank you once again to our panelists for the insightful presentation. Surely I have learned more than one or two things within this sector, and I'm very, very excited to actually be more in depth with all the information that has been shared. So a few of the questions, Michelle, actually I want to start with you. A question from Isaac Litai. I hope I said this right, or Isaac Litai, Parliament member, advisor from Komisi 4 DPR RI 2017 to 2019. So Isaac said, "That's great. I got the Admico story today, Michelle. Would you please inform more details about the methodology of technology your mom in advance or you use or implement to improve the local people, so kelompok nelayan, as the sustainable social partner in fishing industry?"
Yeah. So we go to the basics, of course, transparency and trust. So basically, sometimes fishermen cooperatives, they don't have the means to jumpstart their fishing with catching tools. And then if they have cash, we actually buy off all their cash, and then we tell them how much the market price, and that's what the price we buy from them. And then we also give the invoice and nota timbang from our company, because this is what happened. Like a lot of companies, when they go and buy or take the fish, they don't actually show what is the true weight of the fish that they get, right? And then what's the final price also. And another one is sometimes they already have all of that, but it's too far for them to bring to Bitung, example, right, to the nearest port around in North Maluku. So we actually send our vessels to collect the fish and absorb the cost of the transportation, because fuel is a big part. And to actually have to own vessels that can carry like 10, 30, 50 tons of fish is not cheap.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. I hope it has answered your question, Isaac. And so now we have all our panelists here on screen as well, all together. And I would just like to say that we did not have a drop of participants from this session. That is always really exciting. We have kept you all here interested, and it's always really good to have a very engaging conversation. So the next question I'm going to ask, while we're still on the topic with you, Michelle, there is a question from Adisa. Perhaps you can say a little bit more about tuna capture. I heard that there is a shifting from a large vessel to a jukung, Cadik Orkano, in 2015. Is it true that almost all Indonesian tuna captured currently using jukung?
Nope, that's not true. I think, I'm sure there are some, different regions have different focus, right? Because like for us, we have 3 types, which is purseiner, handline tuna, and pole and line tuna. We have 3 types of vessels, but our chilling tank fish, so we are like in between, because if to put in perspective, like small fishers, like maybe they catch only a few hundred kilos, right, a day, and then like super seiner in the Pacific, they can catch 500 tons a day, a catch. So like those are these are actually the dynamic, because like how else can you actually like think? And all of our vessels are actually no refrigeration on board, because we believe like to keep to preserve the true, and we actually grade it later when after we receive it in the factory.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Michelle. I hope that has answered your question, Adisa. Going on to our other panelists, Alistair, are you still there with us?
I am.
Great. Okay, I do have a question for you, Alistair. So this is from Widya Hapsari. Could you please elaborate briefly about the climate change modeling linked to the blue financing?
I don't recall really talking about that in any detail in my talk, but I think it must
but I think it's picking up from what maybe Widya might have heard previously.
Yeah, we could be referring to perhaps the European Space Agency sort of work, where we're looking to collect that data. But yeah, that's so. I'd probably take that one offline, because that's talking about something that we still. This is kind of sneak preview stuff, and I'd prefer to take that one offline. But obviously, climate change is the big issue. So that can basically give us such a big challenge to the whole seafood industry. So really, that's the big elephant in the room, and the big question about that is it going to go faster than what we anticipate? I guess. So.
Yeah. So with blockchain, I do have a question here from Ruben Pinanta. Alistair, how not all fishermen are aware of new technologies, especially blockchain. Like I mentioned to you before, myself working in technology, blockchain is almost very rare within the fishing industry. How would you introduce the value of Fishcoin to these fishermen, or how have you?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It is a big challenge. So it's all about, to spread that awareness, we've got to collaborate with people, and that's like we've talked about, these key partnerships, and with government, for example, and governments are very incentivised. And also a big one for us is, and we've been to a lot of these events, and we've collaborated closely with the GSMA, which is the association of all of the telcos, and they're a key collaborator, because they are incentivized to spread the awareness through all of their telcos, who are incentivized in being the main beneficiaries of because the airtime top-ups that are received, obviously what the telcos enjoy that remuneration from. So that's a big one, because that's in the telephones in their hands, and it's all across the planet. So yeah, that's a good question. It's
almost like a win-win situation for all the stakeholders, which is always very difficult to do. So I I second you for that. That's great. Thank you, Alistair. I hope that answered your question, Ruben. Next question, we actually also have a question from Adisa. This is to Jency, by Jency. So Adisa said, we know that in 2015, large vessels over 30 GT were banned for fishing activities in Indonesian seas based on the moratorium issued by the Minister Susi at the time, and it was deemed to have caused economic losses to the country, so including overexploitation. But later, then the policy was revoked by the successor minister in 2020. So, what is the long-term direction of our policy in the marine sector in the next 5 to 10 years, in your insight and knowledge?
Thank you. Okay, so of course I will only quote what government said, which is not far from our 5th year RPJMN, which is medium-term national development planning, which is the guidance of where our country will go in the next 5 years. So basically, if you see the document, basically it states that it will improve the productivity, which is improve our production. But there's a strong but there that we have to maintain that the amount of fish that we catch is nicely below the maximum sustainable yield, which is like not going to the overfish, not overfish the stock. So if we then interpret that, means that we have to increase, of course, production, which is need to have all the both above 30 GT to be in the game again. Like what Michelle explained, that we need all the boats that still sitting nicely in the port now to go back to the sea, catching the fish, and just utilize all the resources sustainably, utilize all the resources sustainably, that we can achieve the target. So I think that's the direction, because again, numbers say that there are a lot of livelihood involving there. We rely this for our protein. So I mean, for us, Indonesia, archipelagic nation, fish still our main protein.
Yes, I love that, main protein for the country. I believe Michelle, you were able to answer this question as well, if you're still there.
Yeah, actually, yes. So in regards of the regulations, our very expensive and hard to learn lessons is that probably regulation will always change. But the goods is this: you have to comply, and basically it's about transparency. So as we grow, and as we improve, and as we comply, I think even if the regulations changes, I think we can adapt.
Yes, I think. Sorry, I almost got cut off there. Now, adaptability is also a challenge, but I think over the years, it's continuously learning from learning the mistakes and all the challenges that we obviously face, especially within the industry. Okay, next question. We are actually full of questions today. I'm really excited to read out some of these questions. Before I go back to Alistair, I actually want to go to Radix. Our pinpoint man for technology. How far has ZebraX IoT solutions overcome the lack of traceability and visibility in upstream fisheries? Then, based on ZebraX, what are the challenges for digital adopters after implementing these technologies?
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so basically with the deploying of our IoT solution, we will be able to collect the data related with the fishermen's location for the fishing. That will help us to collect the data to ensure that basically they are perform the fishing not on the restricted zone, as well as we can identify the tools that they use to perform the pattern based on the vessel movement. So this is help a lot for the visibility. Related with the challenges that they are facing after the deploying is actually the continuation. So they need to ensure that they keep maintaining the device, let's say charging it properly to ensure the data we still kept able to collect the data. That kind of things is more on the post deployment. That's the aspect. Maybe at the beginning, maybe we are very interested to get the data. Wow, so many data, the insight that we can have. But after some time, the fisher maybe forget to charge the battery, so as we don't have the data anymore. So that kind of continuation of the maintainability need to be there, yeah, because that device need to be maintained to work properly.
Thank you, Radix, for that response. I hope that answered your question to Alfia Aulianda. And then now we're going to go back to Alistair. This is a question from Priyanto Setio Pambudi. The question is, to what extent, I'm going to just recap his question first. A sea area has different fish stocks. So how to apply a closed system in the use of marine resources so that the state is able to make the right regulations in regulating fish circulations with different consumption levels in each country. To what extent has this model been implemented or similar to it? What else do we still find a lot of illegal fishing use in the various marine areas in Indonesia? Perhaps some examples.
This one is for me?
Yes, it's for you.
Okay. I would think that it would be more a better question for Jansi, perhaps, because it sounds more
it's for you, and then we are going to Jansi. So
okay, here. Okay. Yeah, no, we've got plenty of resources here. I think illegal fishing is a massive challenge. I mean, I think that's we're talking about 700 kilos a second, and when really, but it's also a bit of a grey area because it becomes on the illegal, unreported, unregulated. What's the definition there of that as well? So again, that comes back to the data of that, and so how accurate that data is. So we know there's challenges out there, and we've got all of these technologies that like Radix has, and all the management and monitoring and compliance practices that that governments are using to try and get a handle on this. And our technology is just a part of this. So all working together, I think we can try and to get the best, I guess, windows on this. I mean, we've had people from Interpol come to us and everyone to try and see ways that we can use these solutions. And obviously, even the European Space Agency and others like that are looking at ways where we can use all the fishing vessels and things like VHF radio technology to be able to function as eyes in the sea. So there's kinds of very exciting stuff that's, I think, continuing to build, probably through these COVID times, to help get better eyes on the sea, because it's a massive challenge.
Yeah, I think security overall, on land, and the sea is always a progressing work, especially for various governments, and especially Indonesia being an archipelagic nation. I'm sure Genzi will agree. Genzi, you want to come here and answer this question for us?
Well, thank you. Okay, so I think the first one, when we're talking about illegal fishing and all the red stuff, the stuff like unregulated and reported, I think the first thing that we should be put in mind is we should stop criminalizing our fishers. They are our hero. That's the first one. So because what I see is, bad guys always, it's everywhere. It could be in the farming, in the mining, etc. And could be also in the fisheries. But we have to understand first that it's just what in Indonesia is just oknum. Yeah. So that's the thing. And the second one is there is no one single solution that could be magic for all the problems in fisheries, including in illegal fishing or IUU fishing. So what we learn is some measure works, but to be really effective, they have to be work together with all other measures, all other intervention, all other tools, including the technology. Technology itself cannot really wipe everything, all the bad guys. No, it must work together with all different tools. And of course, when we want to find the best method, then again, we have to sit together, working with the industry, because they are always this kind of the bad guy when we're talking about fisheries. So just sit with them, asking what will be the best solution to overcome this problem, and finding the mechanism. So I think we should move from suspicious to everyone and starting working together and just choose and find like the right fit method for the problems.
Thank you, Jansi, for coming in as well to answer this question. And I think we are going to wrap up this webinar today. It's been a pleasure to have our panels of experts. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Mishala, Jansi, and Mas Radix as well for being here and actually giving us insights. Apart from somebody who's probably already in the sector, some of us might not know that there are some of these innovative technology solutions that we can utilize and maximize to be able to basically work on developing better and sustainable fisheries. And as you have already shared your objectives, your goals, as well as technological developments and various different ways of how to support the fisheries, essentially we can all say that it's about really coming together and leveraging all these technological solutions to face these challenges that it seems to be an ongoing challenge, and surely it's not going to stop anytime soon. In fact, with the pandemic, I think all of us are now becoming more technologically dependent, but with that comes also opportunity. So I hope that everyone who is watching here today are not only being fed new knowledge, but also inspired to create technologies like Alistair's Fishcoin, Radix, ZebraX, and of course following the goals and learning from all these best practices and how to lessons learned to face all these challenges from the website that Janzi had shared earlier. I believe that is on globalmarinecommunity.org. Yes, thank you so much. And of course, Michelle has shown that by being a family traditional business, even if one lacks knowledge, that does not mean that is a weakness. In fact, it becomes an added value to the business. Again, I hope that everyone here had a very good session, and thank you for listening, and thank you for all your questions as well. Stay healthy, wear your mask, and have a blessed week ahead. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mandated in the final outcome of the second ministerial meeting of AIS Forum in 2019, the AIS Blue Startup Hub was established to create a perfect environment for startups to expand their network, engage with local stakeholders, and create innovative ideas and solutions. AIS Blue Startup Hub aims to connect startups with relevant stakeholders, incubators, and venture capitalists in AIS participating countries, provide learning platforms for startups, and allow business owners to support one another through collaborative partnerships. The AIS Blue Startup Hub comprises of 3 fundamental activities: AIS Blue Startup Hub website, AIS Blue Startup Hub innovative solutions with supporting activities such as 2020 AIS Innovation Challenge, AIS Blue Startup Hub knowledge sharing session, and AIS Blue Startup Hub mentoring program. The AIS Blue Startup Hub website is a platform where startups, incubators, accelerators, mentors, and government from the AIS participating countries can use to get connected to each other. Right now, around 35 startups from 9 AIS participating countries have joined the AIS Blue Startup Hub community. In 2020, AIS Innovation Challenge was held to find innovative ideas and breakthroughs that can help societies and businesses to be more resilient and adaptive during crisis situations. The selected winners of the 2020 AIS Innovation Challenge were invited to join the AIS Blue Startup Hub mentoring program. The top 2 winners of the challenge are CoinPack from Indonesia and Bula Lance from Fiji. CoinPack offers high-quality reusable packaging solutions designed to replace single-use sachets in a sustainable way. Lightweight packaging consists of refillable PET bottles, meaning they require minimal use of raw materials, have a long lifespan, and are easy to transport and clean. CoinPack repacks home and personal care products produced by FMCGs, its reusable bottles, and distributes them to warung stores and waste bank communities. With each buy, the customer makes a small deposit and receives an incentive when they return the empty bottle.
The 2020 AIS Innovation Challenge is an extraordinary business competition that generates innovative ideas and breakthroughs that help society and business sector to be more resilient and adaptive during these crisis situations. I'm so glad to join the incubation program where my team can deep dive into real challenges in today's market, identify and solve the challenge that we are facing. We also gain knowledge, ideas, and other advantages from experienced startup founders, investors, and public sector actors to accelerate our business growth. Thank you.
Bula Lands is a freelancing platform for SMEs to access personal and professional services, showcasing local Fijian talents and expertise, and not forgetting the Bula customer service. Bula Lands provides customers with various services: access to high-quality professionals on an easily accessible online platform on demand, contract and payment management system, conflict resolution center, online and offline payment options, verification freelancers, and personal services. The platform will also have a capacity building section specifically designed for freelancers, so they can gain expertise and become certified in their field, or they can diversify into other areas.
I went on the Blue Hub, AIS Blue Hub platform just recently, and I discovered so many resources and so much opportunities that is available to young entrepreneurs like me and startups who are just wanting to grow and scale their businesses, access mentors, access networking opportunities, and also the ability to just learn and grow into the international market.
In September 2020, AIS Blue Startup Hub launched its mentoring program, which is an 8-session mentoring program aimed to find a pilot project that can give a solution for the problem faced in the AIS participating countries. The mentoring program is attended by 18 startups from 6 countries, which are Fiji, Indonesia, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, Philippines, and Madagascar.